So, years ago, I started my podcast after having a random night of thoughts and things coming to me, and found it interestingly therapeutic to sort of vocalize the mishmash of feelings and things that were going on in my life and what I was feeling at the time. And well, I find myself in a similar position right now in my life. There's been so much shifting and changing, and I wanted to share this video because, well, one, to kind of just unfiltered express my thoughts, but also because I feel like maybe those of you watching or listening to this may relate to some of the things that I'm expressing, especially in the times in which we presently, so many of us are finding ourselves with so much shifting and changing in the world today. First and foremost, the first thought was that I was lying in bed and I am a mother, and my child is almost 18 years old, and I am very human. And part of that experience is navigating the different thoughts and feelings of this, of coming to this position in which your child is entering adulthood, that feeling of, did I do okay? Am I imparting wisdom enough? Are they, do they have the tools that they're going to need? Can they cook themselves dinner? Uh, which a lot of those questions I still don't have answers to. But there's this feeling of noticing that it's natural to come to a spell where there's letting go, and I can look back to my life, and while my family situation was very different than my child's, I was overprotected as it relates religiously, where, my son, probably had a little bit of over coddling to some regard, but it's this feeling of, especially being spiritual, where you feel like we don't want to create any additional trauma, and, we don't want to create any additional this or that. And, it's hard because this evening I found myself kind of just scrolling through social media, which honestly, at this point, I'm finding a lot of frustration with. I'm noticing that I think I'm at a point in my spiritual journey where I love I love all the things. You can watch numerous videos on my channel that talks about, human design, and I can rattle off all the gates and, talk about galactic astrology and, astrology aspects. And, I do have a gift for weaving everything together. But in this particular time in my life, I've gone through a big transition. I've, walked away from, what my life was, which, I've shared podcasts talking about that with the end of my marriage and entering in this new direction. And it's messy and it's been unknown and it's required a lot of healing and jumping and trusting. But what I'm realizing, especially through all of my work that I've been doing with trance channeling, time and time again, messages come through that imply we're really missing the point. And I noticed this evening, I was having this flood of emotions of, being a mother and all the things that in judgment I'm applying to that. And then it's like, I'm trying to probably numb myself through scrolling, and there's a plethora of videos that talks about, the full moon coming up and the Lionsgate 8-8 portal, which I struggle with that. I'm going to be honest, as a spiritual person and a galactic astrologer. I mean, I get numerology, I get the connection of Sirius, but really it's not so specific. I don't feel, for me, it feels so specific to a particular day in which this energy is activated. especially any connections too serious would be more ongoing for a spell. It wouldn't be like a day and then it's over. But that's a whole nother story because, which honestly brings me to the next point, is that what I found myself feeling is as someone logical, there is that side of me that it's like, I want to see the systems, I want to see the patterns, I want it to all line up and make sense. But what I'm realizing is there also comes to a point in your journey spiritually where you have to say, this is what I got. Today, I'm healed enough. Today, it doesn't matter what my Capricorn moon is aspecting. It doesn't matter what day of week or what alignments and planets, because what I'm finding the hard part is that we get so fixated on the systems and what is giving us the awareness that we forget that it really isn't the point or the whole point, that the point is actually in presence and living and being and crying and being the mother that's sad, that this is life. This is the human experience. And I can sit and think, well, what are my placements? And, what are my son's zodiac placements? And where are the planets right now? And, what's aspecting? And why is this coming up? And what trauma is this activating within me? And what is the journey? And what am I activating towards him? And I can get so lost in the spiritual language because there is a plethora out there of it. And please understand, I am simply being raw and honest because one of the things I'm learning about myself and what I'm healing is that it's hard for me to show up and take up space just as I naturally am without there being some sort of aha moment or service or clarity. So me coming and just sharing my randomness is new things that I'm learning to embrace in this human experience. Because when we get so caught up in the healing portion of understanding, and I am first in line as guilty to analyze everything down to a gate, an aspect, a transit, we miss the human portion. That is just the mother dealing with the transition of her child. We overcomplicate it. We attach projects to it and band-aids to it. And we miss that at the end of the day, we're here to be human. I might be a mystical trance channeler, but I have all of the normalness that everybody else feels and goes through. I had one of my clients once say to me in a session that they felt like everybody else was getting it right but them, and they were somehow lost. And I said to them, no, this is what my day just looked like, and I can say that you're not alone. There are many others navigating the same thing. And so I don't know, maybe coming on here and sharing honestly things like this makes or allows other people to feel a little less isolated or alone. And as someone that has had an interesting, well, no, I'm not going to filter my words, a challenging journey of getting to know myself, understanding myself. Healing is great, and it's wonderful when things come up and we have those moments of realization. But at some point, we have to move outside of the explanations and the awareness and simply be in the moment of what we're experiencing. Because I got sidetracked, but as I've been noticing through all of the trance channeling I've privately done with my partner, what comes up collectively, what I'm hearing relayed through clients, is that the first question everybody seems to want to know is, what is my purpose? And the reply over and over and over and over again is to simply embody your authentic nature and who you are, nothing more, nothing less. There's no getting it right. There's no steering off track or doing it wrong or missing the boat, or there's simply this moment. And I have been guilty of analyzing and over figuring the heck out of all of it because it served a purpose for me to understand myself. But I'll also say to you, as someone who loves the I Ching and Gene Keys, or you may know from Human Design Gates, but after a while, you start seeing they're all saying the same things. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to talk about, a system and thought, oh, did I just talk about that last week? And realize, oh wow, no, it was a total different energy, but it's all saying the same thing. And what it's saying right now through the channeling I've done and the experience I have and what I'm hearing from others is connect, connect to one another. Yes, you can understand yourself and wherever you're at on that journey, that's perfect. But there comes to a point, and I am guilty of this, years into this, you have to let the systems go. At some point, you have to let the systems start to fade into the background. I've done a number of different podcasts as guests, and one of the things I've always talked about that really made an impact on me actually came from Richard Rudd talking about Gene Key 60. And I don't have this in my chart. It's not significant in any sense other than as a very logical person, when I heard him speak of this energy, it changed my life. And I've referred to it time and time again. And that is that just like we can appreciate a lake and the borders that allow for the water to flow, paths to be created in life, there is always a time and season in which we can appreciate the systems, appreciate the archetypes and the dots and the patterns. But we're doing ourselves a disjustice if we forget the ever-changing quantum nature of existence and that we are here to evolve and grow. And that these structures are not meant to be forever. And they will, as in all things, change and shift. And there will be times when we see beyond them. We cannot hold rigidly to any particular system or way of being. And when we do, we just put ourselves in another box. We take ourselves out of the, as we label the 3D box, and we put ourselves in a new spiritual box. And we're still stunting our growth and our evolution. And so, I'm just wanting to say that the journey is being, the purpose is being. And as I've been shown and talked about, I've talked about the me within the we. This idea that everything is just ascending and going away, or that polarity is going to completely disappear, and the earth is splitting, and all of these things. I'm not going to say there's a right or wrong, but I can say that one consistency I'm hearing that for me, my truth might not be yours, and that's okay. That resonates is that if the goal was just in ascension and coming back to complete 0, 1 point, universal, knowing, loving, we probably wouldn't incarnate. But yet here we are, choosing to go through all of these things. And what I'm finding in trance channeling is we're doing this not because there's some lesson or leader or in conclusion, but it's because our soul is choosing and that we collectively are experiencing. And as we do, we're evolving and expanding, and we will continue to do just that, evolve and expand. So the best thing in my channeling I've heard you can do is live your particular expression, what your soul is leading you to the fullest. And that's it. There's no savior or saving. It's just whatever role your soul wanted to experience. And yes, for some, that does mean they want to experience that role of leader, sage, mentor, whatever you want to call it. But it's not because it's required of them. It's because that's where their soul is playing. That's where their consciousness is exploring. And it's not about the results. It's about the embodiment of the individual, that as they are embodying their soul's calling and what's lighting them up, the natural effect of that vibrationally is how it influences, filters, or spills out, is the word I like, onto others. And so, I guess in conclusion of this rant, I would say we're in a very shifting time. A lot is changing. I feel like we're evolving into new territory. I feel like the world around us is shifting as a result of it. I feel like there is a pressure to understand, and there can be a pressure in the spiritual community to feel healed enough, evolved enough. It's only natural when there's this external noise that's sometimes spiritually our way of responding to what we're perceiving as that noise is by hyperfixating on the contrast, to hyperfixate on if I do this just right, then I will have the experience I want. I will have the job I want. I will have the relationship I want. I will have the life I want. All of these things. But don't get too lost in that journey to where it becomes confinement and not living, overly analyzing instead of giving yourself grace, trusting that in every moment you are exactly where it is you need to be. And if that's angry, that's where you are. And you're doing yourself greater service and being present and feeling than you are to hyper analyze or explain away the humanness with systems or things to try to make it feel better. I feel like where we're going in the world, the greatest thing we can do is embody ourselves, be present, and to look differently at connection. I've also in channeling found we're not getting away from connection. As a matter of fact, a lot of the messages that come through tie connection into everything. You know, if you're afraid of the water, looking at how are you connecting to the water? What's your relationship to the water? What? How can you be in relationship to the water? But the guidance that's come through is, have you considered water holds memory? Have you considered that every body of water holds a different frequency? Have you considered that when you engage with the water, you're adding your mixture into that? This is something I recently shared on a podcast that came to me. I mean, I'm saying it again because it made a big impact. It really causes you to look at things a little differently. And I'm not perfect. I struggle. And I'm working on showing up more authentically as who I am, the good and the messy. But this is my thoughts, my random late night. It is late here, late night thoughts because I can't sleep. So give yourself grace. Give yourself grace to be in transition. If you're someone that can resonate with, if you feel like you're starting to feel exhausted of change or exhausted of healing or clearing energy, maybe just be for a day. Connect with nature. Don't add anymore. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. So, okay. I hope that if you're listening to this, maybe it helps someone who can relate to where I'm at. So Thanks for listening or watching. Bye.